Well, good morning and welcome to the AFI Group of Companies webinar on the new guidance released by the Strategic Forum Plant Safety Group and IPAF on managing the safe conditions of MEWPs. I'm hoping for this webinar to run for approximately 45 minutes with a short, if I need it, question and answer session at the end. If you do have any questions, you can see the panel there where you can type in the questions and I'll endeavour to answer them. Those questions which I can't answer during the webinar, and I do have sometimes quite a few, I will look to answer afterwards privately. Okay, so obviously welcome. Just a little about myself. That's myself. As you would expect, various sort of qualifications. But very proud to be involved with the Strategic Forum Plant Safety Group for MEWPs, and I'm currently a BSI committee member for the rewrite of the Code of Practice for MEWPs. I've got over 20 years now in powered access, so experience in various aspects in health and safety. And prior to that, I served 8 years in the Royal Engineers as a plant operator, so hence why I got my my experience regarding plant and machinery. In terms of committees, I'm very proud to represent the company AFI Group on the IPAF councils and committees, which you can see there, and also now represent the company on PASMA as the Training Committee Vice Chairman, and also deal with the HAE Higher Association Europe with various sort of health and safety and training committees. Okay, just conscious that this document's come out. It is new. This guidance sets out how these procedures can be planned and managed, and is clear on what and who has responsibilities. What the document also aims to do is to demystify who's responsible for what, when, etc. when a MEWP is on hire. As you'll see from my webinar, there have been some occasions where things haven't been as potentially straightforward as one would actually thought. So agenda, as expected, is fairly straightforward. Naturally, I'll go through the main parts of the document, which I feel that you need to be aware of. But what we will do is focus on important parts and clarify new areas which have now been addressed. The one thing I will suggest is that you get hold of this document. It's freely to download. You can download it from the CPA website, and you can also download it from the IPAF website. Those who don't have it, I can email it to you, so please feel free. Okay, so naturally, inspections, we're going to look at who responsibilities, different types, frequency of inspections, and what would you expect with somebody carrying out in terms of competence of inspections. Thorough examinations, there are different thorough examinations, and we're going to cover these today: initial, periodic, and when we should have a thorough examination after an exceptional circumstance. When we look at maintenance, there's a whole plethora of information with maintenance. It's quite a big section because maintenance is key to ensuring ensuring that the MEWPs are working safely, and do what hopefully we want them to do when we operate a button or a switch. So we'll look at responsibilities, things around pre-use, maintenance, what we do with defects, looking at scheduled maintenance, PPM, and predictive maintenance. And then lastly, we'll have a little bit of a look at competence. We're looking at selection and assessment of people and what we would expect with CPD or continued professional development. So as we know, MEWPs are frequently used as a safe means of access to reach areas that are working at height. To me personally, they hold the most precious thing, life. So it goes without saying that it's essential that all MEWPs are kept in a safe working condition throughout their working life, to ensure that hard-working people, naturally go home to their families, in good condition. We know that from serious and fatal accident data that failures, although uncommon, do actually happen and do occur. And when I'm talking about failures, I'm meaning failures in terms of part of a machine, part of a MEWP, something fatiguing, failing. So, and often these have the potential to to involve serious injury to persons, and also damaging to property and other aspects. So this document lists the triggers for the different types of inspection, maintenance, and thorough examination. We're going to look at this, what was created with this safe working condition and how we reach it. And we're going to clarify individual legal responsibilities and really what each duty holder now has specific duties with regards to this. This document is guidance, so it's backing up the likes of the lifting operations and lifting equipment regulations, and the provision, use and work equipment regulations, and of course manufacturer's information. Now I can tell you that HSE were heavily involved with this, as was the CPA, and the HSE have endorsed this guidance. So needless to say, should I tell you any more, but when the HSE are going to endorse something, they were involved. It's likelihood and a very good chance that should an incident occur, they're going to refer him back to the information contained within this document. So please be mindful of that when you're hiring machines. One thing that the HSE did say, this document was, it was following a sensible and proportionate approach to managing MEWP health and safety, and I think it's quite important that we take that. They've actually said this is sensible and it's proportionate. So just be mindful of that in terms of making sure that you do what you should be doing with regards to MEWP safety. Okay, just one point that I need to make out and stress, because I am conscious that I do get people book onto the webinar from overseas. The guidance document is restricted to the management of inspection, maintenance of and thorough examination of MEWPs, and it's written for the application of UK within the UK legal jurisdiction. So just be mindful of that. It does not provide guidance on the requirements of MEWP design, the safe use and training, but it is going to refer to groups, which is all groups of MEWPs, and types of MEWPs as listed in EN 280. So just in case you were thinking, do we need to install this within our companies, and we're maybe in the States or the Middle East. Okay, there are some useful definitions to identify the responsibilities for each duty holder, and like as we would expect, it can include a plethora of people. But if we take them in their own owner, so likelihood, company, a firm, or a person owning the MEWP, including those who hire it out to a user. A user, person, or organisation that has control of the planning, management, and use of the MEWP on site, potentially responsible for ensuring the machine is kept in a safe working condition. Note that the user is not necessarily the same as the operator. And of course, the operator, person directly using the MEWP controls from the work platform or from the base. And this is not necessarily going to be the same as the user. Now, sometimes the user is the operator because it's we're hiring to a one person, but often it's this can sometimes be a little bit muddied in terms of waters. So okay. So originally the HSE, sat with the HSE, and originally it would appear the HSE clearly became somewhat frustrated on the issues surrounding inspection, maintenance, and thorough examination. Now, although they didn't disclose it during the working group meetings, it was obvious, it was clearly apparent that in some cases it would appear that duty holders didn't even realise that they were responsible for some elements of inspection, maintenance, or thorough examination. And sadly, as we'll see a little bit later on, this had some terrible consequences. Many issues occur where users believe that they have carried out the relevant duty under the health and safety law and that they've provided safe work equipment for their employees. However, we see there are often cases where a thorough examination has been deemed to satisfy maintenance requirements, and maintenance or inspection have been deemed to satisfy the requirements of a thorough examination, which is wrong. So clearly something needed to be done to ensure all parties involved in either the hire, lease, ownership, or lending of a MEWP understood their legal duties. So the HSE, along with IPAF, CPA, and a number of industry experts were asked to join a working group to essentially pull all the data together and formulate and collate this into one document. Very proud I was part of that working group. I think we worked on it for 2 years, 18 months, something like that. And it was originally, it was released in, I think it was May or June this year. So just to re-emphasize, essentially the aim of the document is to create the safe working condition, this safe working condition, and it's essentially a cradle to grave aspect of the MEWP, ensuring that along the way relevant duty holders are aware of their legal responsibilities. So as you can see the picture there, inspection, maintenance, thorough examination, we're going to create this safe working condition. If I forget to do one part of it, we're not going to achieve our goal in the centre. Okay, as you would expect with any aspects of them necessary, we often think of the three elements: inspection, maintenance, and thorough examination. So in inspection, often you think it might just be the operator who carries out their pre-use checks prior to operation, but it goes far beyond that. Rental companies carry out pre-inspection and also post-hire inspection. So they can actually photograph the machine and before and after the hire, identifying that the machine is in good working condition and good, or the contrary, it's been damaged and naturally there's issues. Maintenance, often this is left to service engineers and PDI engineers, yet some users didn't even consider maintenance as part of their hire contract, just thought it was down to the hire company, and it's not. Thorough examination, well, these are tests and examinations of a MEWP which are undertaken by a competent person. Okay, and we'll cover this a little bit later on. Okay, so them three elements, it was kind of one of these things, how do we actually put them across in a simple way? So what we decided to do was to come up with this illustrative comparison. And in principle, they're similar to those required around the fact if you use a car or a motorbike or even a push bike, we need to ensure that we inspect it, we need to ensure we maintain it, and in some cases we may need to ensure that we have it examined or MOT'd. So a simple comparison was included and really designed to help the reader understand the significance and differences between the three elements. So you can see there with a car, we'd expect the driver to perform visual and function checks, identify any faults before they drive off, much the same as we would with a MEWP. Likewise, with the maintenance side of things, some of us might not be capable of doing maintenance on vehicles, and modern cars you generally can't do, so we have to take it to the garage. We'd expect them to be trained people and give me a machine back in a good condition, safe state, efficient, and in good repair. Likewise with in-service inspections and maintenance, very much the same as a rental company would expect. And of course, from an MOT point of view, if my car's over 3 years old, I have a requirement, a legal requirement, to ensure that I get it MOT'd. This is impartial. We're going to have a competent person. He's going to do various tests and checks of the car in such depth and detail as considered necessary. Again, very much the same with thorough examination under Regulation 9 of the LOLA regulations. So that's why we decided to use this illustrative comparison, and I think it works. And hopefully you can see why we've done that. Okay, as anything, the document sort of recognised that if these are not carried out, they're not carried out efficiently, they're not carried out effectively, potentially it could have severe safety and financial implications for your business. Okay, so you've got to make sure these are done. If not considered carefully, the three essential and distinctly separate elements of inspection, maintenance, thorough examination can also become blurred and indistinct, which significantly increases the risk of machine failure. So therefore, if we do have effective procedures in place and we have cooperation between different parties, people communicate frequently, users and owners are aware of their parts that they have to play, manufacturers communicate with rental companies, then we're going to be in a much better place, and we'll cover that a little bit later on as well. All right, so in inspections wise, I'm not going to go through all of them, you'll be glad to hear, but table 2 is going to give you a list of types of inspection, so you can see that it gives you some sort of reference to who's responsible and what you should be doing. Okay, but then equally, if I take, for example, a PDI, the MEWP owner should ensure that before any hire or use commences, the MEWP is inspected by a competent person to confirm that it's safe to be put into use or go out and hire, and it has the requisite information contained within it. So yep, happy days. That's what we expect. The operator's manual, decals are legible and in good condition. We've got an example of a thorough examination, some type of reference to it. Okay, so that's an example. Pre-use inspection. Okay, so the user should ensure that a pre-use inspection is carried out. This could include a static check, but it also could include function checks. It's performed by the individual operator at the beginning of the work shift or their working day. And then prior to work, if I take that machine over from somebody else, it should be my responsibility then to carry out the check on the machine. So if I've taken it over from Bob and he's used it for 3 or 4 hours, I've got to carry out the check. and then ensuring that there's no damage or issues with that machine. Inspection due to other circumstances. So on that one particularly, where a MEWP is subjected to an exceptional circumstance which potentially could be liable to jeopardise the safety of the work equipment, the MEWP should be removed from service, subjected to a thorough examination to, of course, ensure that it's safe to return to service. I'll cover this a little bit later on, some of the examples of why we may need to bring that into play. So we should always have a management review of the inspection records, and that's we would expect that this review would cover things like: is your inspection regime and frequencies appropriate? Are they being performed in accordance with the manufacturer's requirement? What does the manufacturer's requirement say? Have they changed any procedures? Confirm that inspections reflect the true condition of the machine at the time, and they're not just tick box exercises. Have we communicated with maintenance staff? Are we got a facility there where if they identify a fault or something like that, it brings it to the fore quite quickly. So it might be a defect or a wear on a certain part. If you've got one of their machines, that's only going to be isolated to that machine. If you've got 50 of them, it's going to be different. What about analysing trends to improve maintenance regimes? What's working, what's not working? And of course, confirm that any sort of machines found with safety critical defects are removed from use. We rectify them and re-inspect them. But of course, then we've then got a duty to tell the manufacturer, that things are maybe amiss with their product. Maintenance-wise, obviously maintenance is the process and work of ensuring a machine is kept in proper condition, safe state, efficient working order, and good repair. Now, for the duration of any hire, the user retains a legal responsibility for ensuring that maintenance is carried out. Now, some of that maintenance might be us carrying out the maintenance. I'll give you an example. For example, batteries. Yeah, so if your operators are not checking batteries, you're potentially going to boil the batteries dry, which there are other risks there, explosion and fire and different types of issues with the machine. But if you're then allowing us or requesting that we come onto site, to top up batteries and such, then you've got to give us time to do that. You've got to allow us access to the machine. Countless times, when we've had issues where we're not allowed to go onto site, because the machine is in use. How many times have you ensured that operators have carried out their pre-use checks? I would suspect it's countless times. Yet, how have you ever spot checked their work? Ensured that the condition of the controls, the decals, the general cleanliness of the machine, as it was when it was hired. Okay, because recalling, most companies now are going to take a photograph of that machine, and like everything, if it's not like that when you get back, you're going to get potentially charges relating to the condition of the machine. So always make sure that you've got some sort of checking process in place. From a maintenance point of view, the section covers the two most common types of maintenance. So planned preventative maintenance, or PPM, which essentially is intended to lower the probability of failures. This in turn will reduce the risk to the operator and others rather than the serious issue of correcting them after they've occurred. It does emphasise, though, if planned maintenance intervals are too great, the reliability and safety of the machine may be compromised. Likewise, if they're too short, we may have unnecessarily high costs regarding to maintenance. Predictive maintenance is, however, condition-driven maintenance, and this is an approach that some people may look at. So this uses available maintenance records, measurement, signalling, signal process methods to accurately diagnose individual components or machine conditions. So, for example, oil analysis, wear tolerances on wear pads and such, data logging and telematics, all these sort of things that we can now have to actually look at parts of the machine. And you've seen systems before where they computers, they know it's going to fail before it fails. So it's a similar system. Okay, design and development. Now, although the document doesn't specifically talk about design, it does emphasize that there is a wide variation of design and develops in MEWP technology, and it therefore making it more essential that all maintenance information is managed effectively to be of maximum benefit. So it strongly recommends that all MEWPs are registered with the manufacturer. So you may buy a MEWP from somebody. We sell our MEWPs to to end users, you are strongly recommended then to register that with the manufacturer, so that if anything does become apparent, you're going to receive regular safety alerts, updates, support, in a timely manner. One of the things that came out recently was the new guidance on MEWP safety alerts, and this protocol was produced by that Strategic Foreign Plant Safety Group and IPAF. So it tells you what to do in the event of something happening. I've known of safety alerts, pop up for machines that, the alert happened 3 years ago, and some safety managers got hold of it, put their logo on it and sent it out, and then everybody thinks it's a new alert, when in fact it was dealt with, moons ago. So just be mindful of that. It also talks about maintenance information coming in various formats. Not obviously including paper, the paper that engineers will use, but equally electronic and digital. So one of the things that it does, the document does say, is having the ability to retrieve, so store and retrieve the information. As you expect, with any incident or issue, the HSE are going to ask you to be able to retrieve information. And if you've not got it in that sort of format, then you could find yourself wanting in terms of not able to demonstrate your safety ability. It's also essential to ensure that updates to any safety manuals, operators manuals, safety alerts and other information are communicated immediately to maintenance personnel, and any superseded documents are removed from service. So taking the old manuals out and putting the new manuals in, because manufacturers do update them. So just be mindful of that. Okay, in terms of maintenance plans and scheduling, this explains the different maintenance at certain intervals and frequency of tasks, such as when do we lubricate something, when do we adjust it or replacement, when am I going to do a hydraulic oil change, are initially based on the recommendations contained at the manufacturer's manuals. So you're going to get that in this service manual, etc., and various things. And generally these are taken as the maximum interval between maintenance activities. But then it reiterates that various factors may require maintenance to be carried out more frequently. So for example, high utilization. So if you're multi-shifting machines, frequent loading at or near the maximum rated capacity, potentially excessive road use for vehicle mounted MEWPs, or trailers. Any of these may accelerate the wear of components. Think of your own car. If you're doing 30,000 miles a year, you're going to have it serviced more often, you're going to have it inspected more often, your tyres are going to wear out. So it's exactly the same. Equally, the environment, it may be harsh, it potentially could be corrosive or an abrasive environment. And so thinking of like quarries, marine or industrial sites, you may find that certain components don't particularly, work or wear very well in them situations. This might accelerate wear and corrosion. So again, it's being mindful that these things can happen and potentially have a big effect on the machine. And of course, feedback. In terms of feedback, information and recommendations. So checking inspection records, looking at maintenance records. Indicating that if you've got 20 or 30 or 40 of the same machine, you inspect them through examinations, and you may identify that a certain part is actually maybe failing, or there may be a history of that in terms of accelerated wears. It might be a bad part or a bad batch. So these are things that you need to be mindful of. So naturally we move on to competence, and it is good practice for a training plan to be drawn up for each person carrying out any maintenance on MEWPs. The plan naturally should take into account previous experience, qualifications and underpinning knowledge. Persons undergoing initial training, we've got to start somewhere, should be more closely supervised and where appropriately be assessed more frequently. As in everything, you're going to shadow them quite closely, and then after a period of time, when you're happy of their quality and their consistency, you're going to let them free to go and carry out the inspections. But like anything, you're going to spot check them. And one of the things the document also talks about is where maintenance activities are performed by contracted third parties. Remember, it's still the responsibility of the owner to make adequate checks that maintenance personnel are competent and any work that they have done has been performed safely. So Okay, if we take a scissor lift, 3A, mobile vertical, scissor pack is elevated, we don't just allow them to climb into the scissor pack. There has been fatalities where the scissor pack has folded down on the person, so are they putting the safety prop into place? Are they, are they disengaging batteries when they're working on them? Yeah, all them sort of things. When specialist activities such as structural repairs, remounting, or complex defects are being considered, it is recommended that it's done in conjunction with the MEWP manufacturer, and sometimes they are the best person to actually undertake the work. We've had issues before where machines have been, unfortunately tipped on their side, and the best person to take that, to be frank with you, is actually the manufacturer. Send it back to the manufacturer, and make sure that machine is safe to go out to the next person. Okay, and I mentioned earlier about this issue, and essentially why I believe part of the document this document came to the front. Manager of an access plant firm has been sentenced to 2 years imprisonment for his neglect on health and safety obligations that led to the death of one man and caused serious injury to others. So after the trial, which was 16 days, the manager was found guilty of breaches of health and safety legislation and sentenced to the maximum penalty of 2 years. I do believe that maximum sentencing penalty is going up, so just be mindful of that. So back in 2012, so this guy's had 5 years essentially to get ready for this incarceration. So in 2012, 2 men were in the platform of a truck-mounted MEWP. They were removing netting from the facade of an office block when the third main boom section buckled, causing the platform basket to fall 28 meters, approximately 92 feet, to the ground. And the result was, unfortunately, one man suffered fatal injuries and another person was injured. They were advised by the manufacturer so following an early incident in May 2011 involving the platform, after which the company had instructed repair to the damaged section of the main boom. The repair had been incorrectly carried out and as a result had subsequently failed in their duty to carry out an adequate thorough examination of the platform. They had been advised by that manufacturer to replace the damaged boom. Instead, they chose a much cheaper repair that left the boom in an unsafe condition. Unfortunately, at the time of the accident, the MEWP had a catalogue of defects, some of which were safety critical, demonstrating that it did not have an adequate proactive maintenance and reactive repair system in place within the company. So for a complex piece of equipment like this, or any MEWP, that system should have included daily checks, intermediate inspections, maintenance based around the manufacturer's recommendations, and the 6-monthly thorough examination carried out by a competent person. The competence and diligence of a thorough examination is always vital, as it's them who declare that MEWP to be safe. So this company had failed to carry out a diligent thorough examination and declared the MEWP safe to use, and unfortunately, as you can see from the photo there from the BBC News, that was the aftermath. So when that takes me back onto competence of maintenance personnel. Naturally it's going to be apparent that different types and models of MEWP require significantly different knowledge and skill sets to maintain them correctly. So it's essential that the maintenance of MEWPs is always carried out by people who have been assessed by their employer, and we're going to be looking naturally for people with adequate knowledge, training, skills and experience. So if I look at this machine here, something like a 19-foot scissor, fairly straightforward MEWP in this industry, and then when we look at something like that, these are the same categories, 3A, mobile vertical, and yet we've got one machine there that's 19 foot to the platform, and we've got a 32 meter scissor there giving you 105, 106 foot of working height depending. So the totally different machine, totally different beast, exactly the same type. So what we would expect of a person carrying out maintenance inspections on that potentially could be significantly different to the what we'd require of them. Have we sent them on manufacturer's courses, because there are totally different things inside them. Okay, so it also explains that CPD is important, because updating knowledge and improvement of maintenance personnel skills throughout their working life is essential. Like anybody in a competence-based role. They've got to maintain the competence and understanding of technical advances. I'm sure many of my peers in this industry will remember boom superstructures mounted on large vehicle chassis, yet today we can see the same working heights being achieved with the same size boom on the chassis of a van. Materials are getting lighter, stronger, much more technical advances in manufacturing, new techniques being developed, and a much stronger reliance on electronics, computers, and telematics these days. So, from a product knowledge base, we've got to make sure that this is essential, that people are doing this both their basic training and part of their CPD for maintenance. Okay, remind you, of course, here, the last bit there, CPD is a joint responsibility between the maintenance person and their employer. It should be documented and part of the individual's personal training and development plan. Okay, thorough examinations, Lola Regulations 1998, which I will read this out. Examination, which may include tests of a MEWP undertaken by a competent person in such depth and details as considered necessary to enable them to determine whether the equipment being examined is safe to be taken into or continue in use until the next scheduled thorough examination is due. So often we'll expect, or you will expect, a physical evidence of a thorough examination on the MEWP. And in the case of lifting equipment for lifting persons or an accessory, this is must be carried out every 6 months. Okay, from a thorough examination point of view, one thing to point out, thorough examination is not part of a maintenance regime. Right? It should never ever be viewed as a substitute for a maintenance program. So just because it's got a thorough examination, just because it has a thorough examination, doesn't necessarily mean that it's been maintained properly, and vice versa. So it is the user's responsibility to ensure that thorough examination has been carried out for any MEWP which is under their control. We need to monitor expiry date of the report, and we need to ensure that we have evidence of that thorough examination before the machine is put into use. Most rental companies, as an owner, we the owner, will monitor the expiry date of the report of the thorough examination, and we often contact our customers or the user and to tell them that it's about to expire. We will remind them of their legal duties. They cannot use it after this date, and yet even we have been to site after the date has expired to find the machine still in use. So we have now, we even have the ability to have equipment and software which can be installed on the machine and the MEWPs to ensure the machine cannot start if the thorough examination has expired. Users can arrange by contractual arrangements for the owner to organise thorough examinations on their behalf, but at all times the user remains and retains the legal responsibility for ensuring that thorough examinations are carried out. Okay, as you would expect, thorough examinations, as I mentioned earlier, there are different types of thorough examinations. So, I won't go through all them. They're in the document, explaining what they are. An example, a good one, is initial thorough examination. In the case of new equipment, the initial thorough examination is considered to have been carried out by the manufacturer or supplier and confirmed by the date on the specific declaration of conformity. That declaration of conformity can last up to 12 months from its date. However, the important point would be the date at which the MEWP is first put into service for the first time. Thorough examination after exceptional circumstances. So why would I re-examine the machine? Well, it may have had a collision with a structure or another machine. It may have been involved in particularly arduous duties, environmentally wise. It may have had a failure in a certain part. It may have been overloaded or turned over, some overturn. One of the most common ones that we sometimes get is where the MEWP has been modified by the user, not by the owner. So it's had an unauthorized modification. And one common one that we used to get quite frequently is where you get a user or the operator will drill the guardrails to add some type of lifting device so they can bolt something on. You've completely, essentially weakened the platform in some cases, and you'll probably find in situations like that, you may have to, be billed for a new platform. The machine's out of order for a while, so there could be a few issues there. Okay. In terms of the competence, It does talk about them having the experience on the group and type they'll be examining. So like I mentioned earlier with the 2 different types of scissor lifts, and understanding the features and designs of a MEWP and where that information can be found. It also recognises potentially, metal fatigue, non-destructive testing in situations, potentially even setting up of the MEWP and operating a particular type of MEWP. So, there have been people injured when they're setting up the MEWP because they're not familiar with it. A competent person should also be aware of the limitations of their own ability and recognise the need to engage a third party when necessary to provide specialist support or services. Competent person, they will need obviously the appropriate aptitude, professionalism and relevant underpinning knowledge. And sometimes when you think about this, we've got to make sure that we have the right people. This does not mean that the competent person must be necessarily be employed from an external company. So in terms of in-house thorough examinations, when they are undertaken in-house, it's essential that person is formally appointed, has sufficient independence and impartiality to allow an objective decision to be made. So if you do appoint in-house examiners, they must be able to demonstrate their in-house examiner has a genuine authority and independence. Because at the end of the day, anything that potentially could be not deemed as being independent, or you've not been commercial, it could be potentially looked at influenced by and prejudicing safety. So you've got to make sure that you've got the right people in place, sufficient independence and impartiality. Okay, so can a thorough examination and maintenance be undertaken by the same person? Well, why not? Why would you? Let's look at this. The competent person who carries out that thorough examination should not normally be the same person who performs maintenance and repair operations on the equipment unless there are appropriate controls in place. This is to ensure, again, there is sufficient independence between the thorough examination and the maintenance, and to avoid an individual examining their own work. So in situations where they've got to confirm there's no viable alternative to a thorough examination, such as replacing a machine. They've considered all the options for conducting the thorough examination, have identified that it's not reasonably practicable to have the thorough examination conducted by an independent competent person. They've ensured that the person who is to do this work is suitably qualified, independent, to the extent that they would be required for another competent person, and they have recorded how they have justified the decision about who should carry out these functions. So quite simply, you can have the same person do maintenance and carry out the thorough examination, but you've got to have procedures in place and viable reasons as to why you're doing that. And of course, what we need to do then is review things. So a regular management review of MEWP thorough examination records is essential for safe and efficient operation of a MEWP fleet. It does ensure that management can be confident that their systems, be it inspection, maintenance and examinations, are robust, because at the end of the day we need that machine, that MEWP, to be safe to use. But equally, a regular management review may also highlight any shortcomings and the need for potential corrective actions. So it may be beneficial to include competent persons or the employer, and that maybe even a third party competent person in this process. So if you have got that, just be mindful of that. Okay, within the document, as you would expect, there's a few appendices, tables and whatnot, and just really to make your life easy, really. Those of you that don't have a MEWP pre-used inspection checklist, there is one inside the document, freely downloadable from the IPAF website. It's quite well used, and I would sort of suggest that you could use that without much concern. Example of an inspection service pre-hire checklist. You can see there. Okay, it's not on focus. When I scan these off the document, it doesn't always take it because of the quality of the scanning. But as you can see there, administration, towing, stabilizers, axles and wheels, base. That's just an example of something. That list goes on and on. Okay, and of course, last but not least, an example of a MEWP thorough examination record. So report of a thorough examination. So these are all things that you can have that will make life a little bit easier. So if you're ever looking or needing something like this, you've got this within the document. Okay, to just summarize the main points, we've gone through these 3 elements. I've explained why the illustrative comparison was put into place. We've looked at managing the approach and different types of inspections and responsibilities. Of course, maintenance. And then we've looked at competence and this new element of CPD, making sure that we have people, who've got the continued professional development. We've then looked at thorough examinations and the different types and when we can employ or bring in-house examinations. And of course, latterly there, reviewing of the whole process. Okay, so that's the end of the webinar. Thank you for listening. My details are there. If you have got any queries, questions, or comments, then I'm happy to see what you think. Please, we'd love to hear what you thought about the webinar. We do these every sort of quarter. If you've got any comments or you feel as though maybe you'd like a webinar, on a certain subject, feel free to message me. I'm always open to that. I've got a couple of questions. Mike's asked, can he have a copy of the inspection, maintenance, and thorough examination document? Yes, of course you can, sir. I will ensure that you get one emailed over to you. I've also got John now. How can I look at getting my engineers competent for thorough examinations? Okay, so within IPAF they run a CAP program, and that CAP program is a competence assessed persons, and essentially this is an individual assessment of a person. And basically what happens is, and I've been on a few CAP assessments as an observer, you will be asked to provide evidence of your experience, your knowledge, your skills. So essentially you're gathering points. When and if you've got sufficient points, then you can go for the assessment. The assessment is 1 day. Essentially, we're not training you, it's an assessment, and it's a mix of theory and practical. Okay, Phil's asked, how long should a thorough examination take? Well, okay, well that is a piece of string. The big boom that you saw in one of the pictures earlier, I've seen that take a full day, depending on depending on the engineer, depending on what they want to see. But it's a piece of string. You might find, like the small scissor, it could be 1.5 hours, 2 hours. Again, it's dependent upon the machine. Don't forget, they're the competent person. They're the people who make that decision. Certainly, I've never seen thorough examinations completed in 5 minutes. But it needs to be robust enough to cover the machine. Vanessa's asked, now this is a good one. At the end of a hire, can a machine be transferred from one company to another company? Yes, it can. It's what we call a site-to-site. However, not without a PDI, pre-delivery inspection. They should never ever be sent without this, all right? Because at the end of the day, God forbid, you've got to make sure the machine hasn't incurred any damage, issues, or anything like that. So we would always expect that the machine is inspected before being passed on to another user, essentially. It might be a huge machine, and to take it 50 miles back to the depot, it's reasonably practicable to say, well, if we send an engineer out to carry out the inspection on it, then and it passes that inspection, then why should it not, providing it can be done on site, if that makes sense. Okay, so thank you for listening. Really appreciate you taking the time to tune in today on the 26th of July. As I say, my name's Brian Parker. If you've got any questions or issues, or you feel like you need to have a chat with me, then feel free to contact me after the webinar. Thank you very much.